It's Wednesday, let's chat. Hi, I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of StormAsia.com, and this is our regular series of discussions, the WED Web Chat, the Wednesday Web Chat. It's a lunchtime chat about topics that are going on, that are on people's minds, and we discuss them with panelists who are in the know about many of these things. Now, our homes, our houses, we have been on a quest to get ourselves nicely housed since Singapore gained independence. We've had the HDB flats coming up, we've had private property put up. So homes have become a necessity initially, and then it's moved on into methods of investment. So it's become more than a roof over your head. It's viewed upon as an investment to build a future, right? And many of them have profited from them, seeing property values go up. Now, of course, this is a world full of challenges, a world full of all sorts of issues, and global issues now impact us quite significantly. So we've had wars, we've had a pandemic, and through it all, property seems to prevail. Maybe it's because Singapore's land size, maybe it's because of the way the market is structured here. But in that as well, there are a lot of issues to deal with in terms of administrative matters, legal issues, things that keep shifting and changing, requirements are moving all over the place. So it's a complex sort of environment to try and negotiate. So and once you've got your place, sometimes you have to get it because that's a price bracket you function in, and now you've got this house, you're maybe not perfectly happy with it. What can you do with it? So today we have two people from the industry who are well versed in these aspects of looking for a house, right? We've got Janet Au, who's a real estate strategist with Alan Janet Property, and it's part of PropNex Realty. And we've got Helen Ong, an environmental solutions specialist, and her company is Senses.Live. Now, Janet, if we could just have a quick chat, introduce yourself to the audience so they know a bit about you. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for 8 years. I'm Janet. Hello, everyone. I'm currently with PropNex Realty, as Kanan has mentioned. So I specialize in helping home buyers to acquire, sell their property at the best profit, and of course, for buyers, getting the best form of property asset that safeguard their savings, and also look at a long-term plan whereby you also can safeguard their retirements. So that's the objective we always work on.
All right, great. Thanks, Janet, for the quick intro. Over to Helen. Helen,
hello, everyone. I'm Helen Ong, and I'm a Feng Shui practitioner and also a BioGeometry environmental home solution practitioner. So I'm specialized in two areas with regards to the environment. And I'm also trained as an interior designer, proud before becoming a Feng Shui practitioner. That's like, more than 20 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Helen, you talk about Feng Shui and interior design and things like that. Was it a logical flow from ID to Feng Shui? And now you've got biogeometry in there as well?
Yes, definitely. Those years when I was just doing interior designing, when I have no idea what Feng Shui is all about, I'm often really, scared to meet up with a Feng Shui practitioner who is coming into my design work. So that also means disaster after 6 months of work. So after which, when I received, some trainings, when I was curious enough to figure out, is Feng Shui valid, right? Is this really something that's going to be a good contributing factor to improve our lives? It was a pleasant surprise. Along the way, I found out that, well, since I'm an interior designer and I could incorporate these principles, in my design process, why not? In fact, it was a lot better. The clients really liked the idea. Yeah.
Okay, so you've sort of like a one-stop shop.
Yeah, right? Become a one-stop shop. I'm actually the first company in Singapore to integrate design and feng shui together successfully. And then, of course, today, with biogeometry, we have design principles, all the more merrier. It depends, these aspects, and it's even, more satisfying, with this being incorporated. Yeah.
Okay, great. Janet, when you're trying to sell a house, is the feng shui person the last person you want in that space?
Actually, there's always two sides of the coin. So if let's say you're in the situation that you're selling your client's place, and it so happened that it's a feng shui attributes that matches the buyer's needs, right? It's going to be like a bingo. So the buyer will pay whatever price because the feng shui has given his like 100% approval that if you don't buy this is going to be what he's going to prosper them. So it will trigger them to pay even a higher price than what they intended to be. So of course, on the other side of the coin, it could be something that the buyer like, emotionally. But when the feng shui master comes in, the logical takes over. So it might actually cause them to walk away from it. So yeah, the two sides of it.
How often has that happened when a feng shui master has overturned a potential client's decision to buy a place?
I would say it's very rare these days. I think about 8 years ago, I see more of such needs, which is before they make the decision, they will still get their feng shui to do a final check. But I think as the buyer demographic profile gets a bit younger, they tend to do away with it, or they do not actually base their purchase on the feng shui of the layout of the house itself, because they know that they can eventually change the feng shui attributes by getting an ID, for example, or the feng shui himself can do certain changes or add on certain things to change the feng shui to their needs. So these days I find the buyers are more savvy in the sense that they don't just look at the hardware of the house itself. They know that things can be improved along the way with the right ID, with the right feng shui, planning.
So do you think that it's also because the houses are built with feng shui in mind? Do you know if that is the case? I mean, the majority of houses here would be HDB properties. Does feng shui factor into that, do you think?
I think when it comes to HDB BTOs, I think partly also because the government built it on a very fixed template model. So you can't really change the layout or the format according to your perfect feng shui, style. So what they would do is they will really take what the template has been given to them, and then they work along with it, like colors or certain plants at some corners, or change certain angle of certain things, placement of furniture to suit their feng shui. So I would say that the expectation of the house coming in to fulfill your full feng shui needs is, I don't see it as, the demand is not as high as I see it 8 years ago.
Okay. Helen, you've looked at a fair few houses, I'm sure. What do you think of the designs of houses now? I know many of them are becoming smaller, but in that do you think principles of feng shui are being sort of worked into the design factor, the facing, the way the rooms are angled, that sort of stuff?
Yes, it's a huge difference between the newly built houses, whether it's a private or HDB, is getting smaller because of the land scarcity in Singapore. So you see the things changing. If you look at what happened previously when people live in a more spacious home, actually people are more chill. They are more willing to have family time together because they have space, right? So the quality of your life in terms of relationship is really different from today's living. You see that people are very impatient because the space is smaller. They're less inclined to want to spend time together. So it speaks from the way we size and the layout. Because say, for example, the pathway leading into your bedroom is a lot narrower, in order to economize space. So they only have a narrow pathway and it's really dim. And that narrow pathway in the center of the house actually represents your heart. So when you look into matters of the heart, relationship, people has a tendency to be a little bit more, we say, a bit more petty. a bit more impatient, they're less forgiving, less compassionate about the situation around them. So if you look at those who are living in a more spacious house, and the center aspect of the house is obvious, and you can see, and the circulation is good, the temperament of the people living in the house is different too at the same time. So yes, Feng Shui has a huge impact based on the size, the landscape, and the layout on how we live today.
So those narrow pathways, is that why the fertility rate in Singapore is so low?
Well, possibly, because they have lesser patience, right? They don't spend time as much as they would love to, And I don't know whether the pandemic has helped, because with the lockdown, people can't really go out. And, they're more time at home now. Yeah.
But during the pandemic, the property market was still buzzing, right? People were still buying and selling and looking at new places. Did you notice a significant shift in attitudes during the pandemic, Janet?
Okay, the pandemic has caused a lot of people to change their needs and their priority and their values towards their home. I think the lockdown, the circuit breaker that caused the kids to be at home, the husband and wife are suddenly working on the same dining table, facing each other whole day and night, and that actually changed their needs and their wants. So since the 2020 lockdown, when it was lifted, right, we see a gush of buyers coming into the market. Simply, they just want to upgrade their living space to much bigger. Okay, so the last 2 years make them realize that they should park their money where the needs are, which is the home for the past 2 years. So even up to now, when things have opened up, the desire to have a bigger space whereby anytime they are back to work from home again, or the kids are back to homeschooling, they always have this dedicated space. And also, like what Helen has mentioned, I think over the years, during the pandemic, they also realized a bigger space does make a more harmonious living for the whole household. You want somewhere for the kids to run around, or the parents simply just need a space to themselves when they are having a Zoom meeting or doing their work. So I think all these come together, the intangibles and the tangible needs all come together and give a big push to the market. That's why creating a very high demand for the market, whereby people are looking for big units. So for example, the 2-bedder are now craving to have a 3+ study, and so on. The 4-bedder will want to have 5. The 5 will go for a landed. So it's just escalate up like a snowball effect. So because of this demand, with every market, there's always a demand and supply issue. So when demand is high, naturally prices will go up. So that is what mainly caused, the market to get really hot until now.
But that must leave a lot of small units vacant, right? If everybody's trying to go one room up, your 2-bedders are going to be, a lot of them out in the market?
Okay. So you see, the 20s or the 30-something who are still living with their parents, okay, or who are actually waiting for their BTO to be ready, some of them actually drop their queue, okay, and also drop the idea of, okay, let's not going to continue waiting for our BTO for the next 4-5 years to be built. So this young couple could be going out on the market, and because of their limited budget and their CPF, resources, so they could be going for the 1-2-bedder just to get out of this cramping up with their parents. So it also spur on the needs of having their own space, and the waiting time has actually prolonged, due to the lack of workers for all across construction, be it BTO or private market. So the 1-2-bedder are still being picked up by the younger sector, or people who don't have kids, who don't need such a big space. So this whole market, everybody has a needs. Every sector will have their own share of demand.
Okay. Helen, what were the pandemic solutions that you saw which could be effective through Feng Shui or biogeometry?
Yeah, on the Feng Shui aspect, right? But this pandemic, I think it's taught us a lot of lessons, as in like we did not plan ahead in giving ourselves that, that space or that readiness, to deal with this pandemic. So from the Feng Shui perspective, because there are a few locations and issues that we pay attention to, like it is very common that people look into, where's the sickness star this year? Let's try to avoid it so that I won't be the person who is having COVID or be infected. And from biogeometry perspective, we're looking at the sentient qualities. If you don't have the luxury of doing Feng Shui, if you really exhaust what Feng Shui can do because of the limitation of space, shape of the house and design, then biogeometry comes in and help you out, with the sentient qualities to balance out the disturbance balances, for example, coming in from the windows where you're actually maybe facing a substation, or you have a nearby crazy structure that's pointing directly at your house, or the radiation because you're working from home more often now. So your exposure towards your computer, your EMF radiation that's creating the fatigue. So all of these can be balanced out by using biogeometry and not Feng Shui in that sense. Yeah.
You might want to just explain to those who don't know biogeometry what it is and how it started and how it complements Feng Shui.
Yeah, biogeometry actually is founded by Dr. Ibrahim Karim from Egypt. So they work on the principles of physics of quality. So physics students will understand, how actually two different waveform, can enter into certain resonance. Okay, under the law of resonance, they go into that aspect, and how the body and mind actually understand and recognize when we face certain shapes, geometrical shapes, and designs, that enter into resonance with our body, right? And then we also look at the polarity aspect. So it's more common, when we talk to Singaporeans or the Asian market, when we say that everything has yin and yang, and people straight away understand. But simply when you look at yin and yang, you're looking at polarity, right? The polarity that is driving your system, your energy system, like your body, whether the organs are overproductive or underproductive because of the exposure to radiations, for example, okay, or your surrounding living. So that creates, an adverse emotions or your mental thought forms, and leading into inability to be relaxed and rest well or sleep well. So biogeometry comes in, using designs, using angles and shapes and colors and quality of numbers to actually center and balance waveform, that's causing these disturbances. Yeah. So it's done through measurement, through physical radiesthesia.
Okay. So in today's context, if you're living in a block of flats, chances are you got blocks of flats around you. So how does that affect your sense of well-being? Can biogeometry resolve some of those issues? Because as you said, you're looking at something which is not wonderful, beautiful nature or lovely scenery.
So we are not given that luxury these days because the way architects or developers build houses, they want to economize the land, right? So sometimes your house could end up actually facing a substation. Okay, we're still facing a dumping ground, a dumping area. So you have smell, you have sight that's unpleasant, you have all this, what I call the pollution, in the environment. And yes, even simply by one unit, one house that have used biogeometry home balancing techniques to balance the house, you actually get this centering qualities throughout the whole building, throughout the whole space. So it's not just your house. By doing so, you benefited your neighbor. And in fact, you're going to find out that your entire environment become more peaceful. Your neighbors are more peaceful, and suddenly all the noise and the situation that's happening around you, starts to sit down. So yes, biogeometry has a huge impact. When we work on Feng Shui, right, it's very individual and personal. And it's just about your house, your layout. It's going to impact the people living in the house. But the moment you add on biogeometry, you actually amplify your Feng Shui impact and effects that you have done primarily. And on top of that, you get your Wi-Fi, your EMF, everything centered through biogeometry, and your ability to also center the surrounding environment. It could be a construction site, it could be the substation that you're looking at, it could be the dumping ground that is affecting you, for example. So what we want to do is we want to center these effects, that is creating a disturbance in your energy system, to bring about that peacefulness, so that your mind and your emotion is less inclined to react or overreact sometimes, right?
Okay. So these principles would apply regardless of the property, I guess, right? Whether
Yes,
it's your home or your office or
yeah,
a
it could be
factory
home, it could
even.
be office. You're right. So in fact, the officers, they love it. The bosses or the company owners feedback to me that it actually heightened productivity because the workers are less prone to falling sick, and they're more calm, they're more willing to collaborate or cooperate, and less inclined to blame each other when there's an issue. So it brings about, I would say, very, very good result. And I would say that the result is sometimes instantaneous. Even before I leave the job site, we are already seeing things changing.
During the pandemic, you had a lot of people forced to work from home. That whole sense of team spirit and camaraderie is much more difficult to keep up, right? When it's a virtual situation. How do you, in the event something like that comes up again, what should companies do to better equip themselves to manage the situation and keep the team spirit up?
Good question. I strongly advocate that whether companies going to subscribe to doing Feng Shui, because Feng Shui is still, although it's a very common term this day that people think Feng Shui, they straight away know, okay, it's about prosperity, it's about my material. But it's good if you want to prepare yourself just in case we go into another cycle of a lockdown or a situation that you cannot go back to the office. Then I think companies should focus on first redesigning and decluttering, and be able to compartmentalize and better usage of space, and also to understand that which aspect of the space you're using is actually being wrongly used. Instead of the boss or the CEO, who is the one who is giving the direction, sitting on what we call the Feng Shui area, one that is thriving and prosperous, he is actually sitting in one of the worst sector, one that does not thrive, and less inclined for him to make better decisions. That's on the Feng Shui aspect. So let's say in general principle, someone who is more in tune to the scientific aspect, because physics is science, people can understand that. And if Wi-Fi radiation is the concern, right, we can actually implement this together to actually balance up the energy so that when you come back to work, people can integrate better. There isn't this gap. So even now, when you see the workers are going back to the office, some of them actually prefer to stay at home after they can actually go back to the office. So you want to create that kind of environment where people know that the moment they enter the space, it means productivity, it means that cohesiveness, that we can come together and do business. So that kind of momentum or that kind of mindset can collectively, be put together in a space. And then the Feng Shui is balanced, and you can also bring in the biogeometry aspect.
Okay, good. Yeah. Janet, over the years that you've been doing this, what changes have you seen in terms of attitudes and approach towards buying property here? Do you see that there's a lot more downsizing by the boomer generation, for instance, and maybe a lot more purchasing of investment properties, or people getting rid of their investment properties? What are the trends you're spotting?
I think there isn't like a trend, a kind of trend that has evolved, but I think ultimately, be it Singaporeans ourselves or foreigners, all has this very positive impression about Singapore properties, is that it's always a very safe investment or asset to own. So be it you're buying it for investment or you're buying it for own use, ultimately, if you hold the right thing at the right holding period, using in what I tell my customers is using the right runway, usually you are able to make some profits, capital gains, to what you put in, the absolute amount that you put in. So in terms of trend, I noticed that the investors are getting younger and younger. Okay, so I see that people who are already in their just graduated from school or in their early 20s, they are starting to look at property as a form of purchases that they will step into. And I also noticed a trend whereby they actually skip the BTO route, which is what most Singaporeans will say that, hey, you are Singaporean, you should enjoy this perks given by the government to take full use of this BTO application, right? But I noticed a trend whereby the younger generation are going straight to the private route instead of the BTO route first. So I think one of the reasons why the millennials are having this capacity to do it also because I think they have the baby boomers parents who are better to do than the previous generation. So the price gap or whatever cash top up that they need to make their investment purchases or their first private property purchase, it's easier for them to get there. I think their parents has the financial means to help them along to close the gap for them. And also for the younger generation who are in their late 20s, early 30s, I also noticed a trend whereby gone are the days whereby husband and wife come together and buy a matrimonial home together. Okay, I noticed the younger generation actually has a very savvy investment mindset where the boyfriend will buy one and the girlfriend will buy one. So what goes through their mind is that why would we want to have one asset when each of us can own one and then we have two? So this is something that I noticed. And as for the silver generation, okay, as you know in Singapore, the top of mind for the silver generation is the quality of life when they retire. So I noticed that those who are living in big houses or the landed ones, once their kids are married off or move out, they will start to restructure their portfolio and will usually look at downsizing to a private property instead of keeping their landed house to cash in for retirement funds.
Okay, so it looks like there are different pathways taking place here. So the younger generation are buying smaller and into the private arena with the benefit of mummy daddy cash. And this mummy daddy cash is coming also from the older generation that's selling their properties, probably also to help fund some of this. You reckon? So is this enough to keep the property market buoyant?
Okay, the thing in Singapore is that we always have demand because we are land scarce. So the regeneration of land is within this very small piece of land. So for people who need change of their property or they need to upgrade in size because of a growing family, because the youngsters will eventually grow their family with kids, so they'll need more space. So the market will always start to regenerate itself. So that is something that, in fact, the numbers and the data from URA, you will notice, right, the buying volume is actually getting higher and higher over the years. And also, I think the earning power of the average Singaporean is getting higher than years ago. So in fact, husband and wife doing the legal way of decoupling and then come out to each buy one has gotten very, very common. And that's also the reason why the government recently implemented a cooling measure on trust buying, because I think a lot of cash-rich Singaporeans are also buying under trust for their young kids for legacy planning reason. So all these cooling measures by our government also imply the demand and the volume of transactions is going so strong. And when it's going so strong, it will steer the prices upwards. So in order to keep prices still in the very moderate and in the affordable range, all these measures have to come in to keep the market, in a very sustainable level.
Are you saying that the prices are affordable now, Janet? Really?
Okay, I think affordable or not, it depends on how you look at it and how the numbers resonate to your needs. Because if you tell somebody who has come into the market 30 years ago, when the PSF was like $300 to $500 PSF, they're not going to buy the PSF of 3,000 or 2,005 for a 99 years leasehold now. They will find that it's gotten like crazy. So, but if you tell someone who is new to the market and they have been living with the norm of a PSF of $2,000 PSF, $2,000 in the suburb 99 years, the perspective from them is, okay, well, now I can buy 3,000 in core central region in the lux sector. That's not expensive. So it really depends on, which stage of the individual's property journey is at. And when they say expensive, where is it benchmarked at? Where is the benchmark?
So do leases make a big, do they have a big impact on the decision to purchase a place?
Leases as a rental?
No, sorry, a lease, whether it's 99-year, 10-year, or a freehold, or 999, or whatever it is. What sort of impact will these have on the buying?
Of course, freehold will always have to be the most popular option among Singaporeans. It is. However, because of our loaning rules by MAS, there's a TDSR framework that will control how much loan you will be able to get to finance your property. So for some users, some buyers, going for a freehold sector and to have the ideal size and location that they want, sometimes they may not be able to fit into their borrowing capacity. So in this case, they will need to make a choice, which is more important to them. A certain location, a certain size and layout, but it's not freehold, 99 years. Would that be a compromise you're willing to take when you have checklist of your location, your size, your layout? And then, but however, it is the 99 years with a 70 years lease balance, but you cut down the price by about 30% cheap. So this consideration come into play for a buyer who are considering, because there is definitely a premium to pay for a freehold. So for those who see freehold as the key priority, then they need to go back to the drawing board to consider, all right, then maybe if I want a freehold in this location, am I willing to compromise on size and layout then? So these are things that, you have to work out your data and your numbers, and of course your holding objective, the runway you're holding. So if you're going to squeeze a family of 5 into a 900 square feet freehold in their preferred location, is this going to be a practical option in the long run, just for the sake of the freehold tenure title? So these are considerations that home buyers need to look at. So it's not just freehold for freehold sake.
Do you have a sense of how much of the properties on the market are freehold in 999 and 99?
That data is always evolving. So yeah, but definitely the rarity of freehold makes it with a lower supply, and 99 years has a greater supply. So that's why freehold can still command a high premium.
What's happening with all these HDB blocks that getting on in years and it's harder to get loans? I mean, are there people still actively trying to get some of these, even despite the shorter period left in the lease on these houses?
Okay, very good question. In terms of this limitation of loan, right, I realize the buyers who are going for such flats, okay, their key objective, the priority of them going for all this is size and location. And most of the time, these old flats are situated in a pretty good location, as well as they offer very good space. So these buyers who are coming for such product, usually their concern is not so much of the financing aspect of the house. And we do see a handful of them actually are able to pay off the flat. So they are not so worried, or rather their hands are not so tight because of the bank loan regulations. And also with some education, when they find out more about how the CPF is actually used for the flat, they will actually realize that, okay, it's just the end of the day. If I use cash to top up, because there is a cash component, if let's say the lease and the age of the buyer has a certain gap, so if I every month for my HDB flat, because of the age, I have to top up a $2,000 cash to service the mortgage. at the end of the lease, or I mean, when I sell it, for example, when I'm old, whatever I put in cash, I will get back in cash. So they see this as a form of a forced savings, like a insurance, savings plan. So the $2,000 is like safe with my house. So I don't spend my extra $2,000. So I think the needs of the space and the location really supersedes, the numbers and figures
Okay.
for this sector.
Helen, for your side of things, what's the profile like? I mean, are there more older people who are familiar with Feng Shui coming in, or younger people? Do they sort of span different cultures and races? Is there a certain type that come for your services?
My audience is pretty wide. I find the younger generations, they are more and more savvy, and they, these people, they don't want to waste time struggling, about their career, about their lives and relationships. So when they know there's an alternative way, of enjoying their life or improving their life, they're very open. So my youngest client is about 25, yeah, who owns the property and wants to have a house feng shui. A young entrepreneur who came out and started a business. First thing before he did his renovation, he came to for feng shui advice. So I'm seeing that growing trend. Youngsters are very, very receptive when it comes to subscribing to feng shui, or even biogeometry is also a growing trend right now. So I'm quite surprised because I don't advertise, I hardly advertise it. I don't advertise my services. And when you get inquiries coming in, usually by referral, I'm pretty impressed by how the market has changed. But even though so, we have people in the middle age, after going through what they've been through, they realize that if they don't make a change now, whatever that's remained could continue to struggle. So they decided to invest in this area when they upgrade their house, or when their time, it's time for them to renovate. So it's very common, like clients will prepare for their retirement. So they have their children who's growing up, their needs have changed, their lifestyle have changed. So sometimes they work towards the direction of the renovation or revamping the property. In the case of the property, when they want to pass on this property to their kids, they come and ask me, so Helen, it's time to upgrade and it's time to change the way I live. What do you think if I house can redo certain aspect to change the quality of the energy from the feng shui perspective, so that my kids can benefit on. Yeah.
So it's specific to the individuals, is it? Different people would require different changes done to the house?
Yes, different profile with different needs. So the solutions are usually customized. There's no template to this whole thing because every property is unique. Your reference point that you see, even though, let's say, all of us living in an apartment facing the same direction, but your reference point, my reference point will be different. So therefore, there's no, till today when I look at all these aspects, there's no one property that fits all. In other words, there's also properties where someone say, oh, it is bad feng shui for me. But the profile is different. We're looking at a family with children. The needs are different from someone who is single. So let's say a guy who's really young, he's single. He has no plan to get married or have kids immediately. 5 years, for example. So when he live in a smaller apartment with certain sectors that's missing, no concern as compared to a married couple with children, and let's say certain sectors are missing, is impacting the head of the family or impacting the kids. So with lesser affinity with the house, for example, then the profile is different. The feng shui master that comes and says, oh, this house is bad for you, the feng shui doesn't fit you, you should move. So but the next person who move in with a different profile actually thrive in the property. So these are the things that people don't pay attention to it. And sometimes property agents were selling the house. There are enough stories about what happened to the owners. Has been conditioned. They're kind of nervous and think that this property is not going to sell well. The answer is not true. I work with many property agents and homeowners who have difficulty in selling their houses. And when they hire my services or have me to come to the space to take a look and analyze, I could then position them and let them know you should be focusing at what kind of profile, what kind of market when you're selling a space, or in the case of whether you're buying or selling. This is very important.
What's the most bizarre experience you've had, Helen, in dealing with Feng Shui and a customer?
Okay. I mean, it's very common, right? When Feng Shui is concerned, out of 10 clients who have immediate urgent needs is because they have financial issues when they think of hiring a Feng Shui master. Okay, so that's common. Or they have issues with their kids, who couldn't study well. It's very common. Or couples who are married and then they're beginning to see that the relationship is not working well and they want to mend the relationship. That's very common. So everywhere in the world, when I travel to do Feng Shui, these are the basic needs when they hire. But what surprised me the most is there was one day I was just working on someone who's really senior. She's already in her late 60s, going to 70s. So she's running into some financial situation because her husband just passed away. And then there's so many aspects that she needs to think about because, financially they're facing issues because of the medical bills. So I was trying to help her to sort out, so proposing layout, stuff like that to help to generate more financial possibility since she wants to sell properties, that she's holding to turn them into cash. So I thought, we were peaceful, we were happy because these were all the spec lists. And then just before I leave, she said, come back. I said, what happened? Tell me, where is the peach blossom of this house? I was like, what? You're looking for peach blossom? I said, yes, of course. After you sort out my finance, I think it's time for me to look for my romance. Okay, good. Let's look at romance here. Now that you sort out your urgent needs, this is a very balanced client who just decide that, okay, I need to move on with my life. I mean, I didn't expect to happen coming from someone very senior. Usually, not common. Yeah.
Why? Don't you all want love?
Yeah, we do, right? We do. So that was one of the project that was like, wow, okay, I like how forward she is. And true enough, she changed after that when I went back for a review, like 6 months later. Her health is a lot better because she was going through depression, before that. Health so much better, healthier. So of course then I was a bit concerned, right? So I asked, so what about the romantic aspect of your life? You know what I mean? Like, okay, we get all the checklists, right? Your property sold, yes, tick, right? Your health is better, okay, tick. Okay, then come to the part about your romance, right? And then she was, very shy. She said, oh, so many men, so little time. I said, okay. So we got all the box tick, right? She said, yes, you did a very good job. I'm having a great time of my life now. See, Feng Shui, simply Feng Shui. That time we didn't even do BioGeometry for this job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Janet, your most memorable occasion with property?
They all are unique and memorable in a good way. So, but nothing dramatic or out of the norm, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so no major issues for you. Everything moves smoothly. Okay, great.
Nothing more than, yeah.
Okay, we're coming on to time. I just wanted to get one last perspective. Actually, there was a question for Helen. Is biogeometry a subset of divine geometry?
Biogeometry is one subject on its own. It's not a subset. Biogeometry is one on its own.
It's a standalone.
It's a standalone, yeah.
Okay. All right. So just before we leave, could I just get top 3 things that you need to watch out for when you're getting a property from each of you? Let's start with you, Janet.
Okay, I think a lot of people will go with their emotion, which is typically they will go with their most relatable and comfortable location, a place like they grew up in, or where they studied, or where they spend a lot of their time in. So naturally they will be looking at that specific location. It's like, oh, because I like here, because it's so comfortable. So if you're looking for, I mean, I understand that when you're looking for own stay, but if you're looking for something for investment purposes, I strongly encourage you to not let your personal attachment to a certain location that limit you to just that certain place, because that can really keeps your options very limited, and there could be something better that is out of your comfortable location, and you might actually miss out a very good opportunity. And also, I see some investor buyers actually, place their buying checklist based on their future retirement, which is quite common. They will come in with, oh, I'm going to buy this home for rental first, and eventually when I'm older, I will come here to stay. I know it's quite a logical train of thought to do this. You buy a retirement home to keep, and eventually you will need it. But I find that the runway, if it's going to be in a 20 or 30 years window, your needs could change, and the property market can change. So that investment property may not remain as resilient if you plan based on, oh, I like this layout, I'm going to stay here when I'm 70 years old. So it doesn't necessarily work. So are you going to have a property that is going to be on a deficit sort of investment, and then when you're 65 or 70, you come in and stay as a retirement home? So that window of the 20, 30 years, that investment, if it doesn't make sound return for you, does it make sense for you? So this is something to consider. And also at the same time, for those who are looking at property purchasing, be it own stay or investment, and you're just mainly focused on PSF, I think PSF is just something that has been commonly used among the media or in the property lingo. Oh, when you buy something, please make sure the PSF is cheap. But always remember, cheap in what sense? And always stress test that number. Is it truly cheap or truly overpriced? So have a benchmark, have an analysis, study the number, and most of the time you might realize why this certain X number of PSF might be overpriced in a certain sector. Because some PSF looks really cheap when you're doing your research. And I can tell you some of them are ridiculously overpriced. So PSF is not the only thing.
Okay, great. Helen, how about yourself?
Yeah,
3 things to watch out for.
I think when you are looking out for a property, most people fail to look at what is outside the house. The neighborhood and the landscape is indeed important. So as a Feng Shui practitioner, I don't just come to your house and look at your place. I look at the entire surrounding environment even before I visit your space. So knowing where you are living, the surrounding environment, like you're living near a noisy area, are you living near a huge canal? Are you living near, construction sites? All these are factors of consideration because they have major impacts when we actually measure reference point to your space. And the thing is, I know that, it can be a financial constraint for people to just buy a bigger space. But then again, you really need to consider your needs and wants and to understand what are your priorities. Instead of just focusing on your finance, if your health is getting into trouble, what finance are we looking at? You can make all the money you want, but you won't have the health to spend it. So that evenness is important. So if the space does not warrant this luxury, for you to cover all aspects, then perhaps, the consideration of having a home balancing is one aspect. And then the other thing is, when we are using this infrastructure and this modern living, more and more people are loading their space with electronic gadgets. So these are the time where you also want to consider people who are going to live in smart homes, people who put in all this. How is this going to take a toll on your health? For sure, without you paying attention, you are already living in a microwave world. right? You're being baked all the time without you knowing it. Hence, the dehydration that takes place is going to compromise your immune system. So when designing, when working things out, when you buy a home, you do want to take all this into consideration. So the more you declutter, we will say less is more. If you don't have the luxury for a bigger house, then I think decluttering is the key, for you to live better.
Okay, great. Thank you, Janet, from PropNex Realty. Her firm is Alan Janet Property. And Helen Ong from Senses.Live. Thank you so much for that, because I think it was quite useful to get the perspectives of from two different sort of areas, but you sort of come together with regards to property. Essentially, of course, it's what you can afford to live with, I think, that matters. Be comfortable with your position and your situation, and things will change, right? And there have been so many changes, and some have taken place very, very suddenly. So be prepared for all of that. You never know what's coming around the corner. But thanks again to Janet and Helen for their insights. Thanks to the audience for being there. And look forward to the next session. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.